but we're glad that you're here. Well, this next guy, before I introduce him, let me say, be sure and take some time to go up along the tents here of some of the folks that are putting out. There's some information Darren and Angie has about Agenda 21. There's Dan Forrest. There's some information about Justice Newby. The Americans for Prosperity. These guys are one of the, I think, proud new sponsors of Rush Limbaugh's program. So, you know, right? So be sure and stop by and say hi to them and check over what they've got. Well, this next guy, we just call him Major Dave, because if you've ever met him, he's just a one-man army. That's it. But many of us follow him on Facebook. We've had the privilege to share a platform with him and speak at various events. And the more we know him, the more I come to know him, the more I come to appreciate him, and just thank God for his patriotism, his love for America, and his stand for freedom. And that's what this is all about. So, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together and welcome Major Dave Jay.
Thank you very much. The wife and I drove up last night. We didn't want to take a chance on driving up this morning from Raleigh, have something happening on the road, and found ourselves in a little piece of God's country here called Pilot Mountain. The people in this town have been more than just friendly. They go out of their way to say hello and make us feel welcome. So we appreciate that and we thank you for it. I want to talk to you a little bit today about not just why we're here today, but what the reason for today says to us about what we should be doing in coming days. This is our independence. And we are now laboring under the illusion that a dependent people can somehow be independent. We're dependent on government. Government wants us that way. The more of us that stand up and say, we ain't going away, we've had enough, taxed enough already, is growing by leaps and bounds. And folks, it's not just Republicans. It's not just conservative Democrats. It's God-fearing Americans all across this country. I hear people make the case God has no place in our governance. One of the first things, is it not, that we look to in our candidates? What are their personal values? Do we honestly expect them to walk into the door of the legislative building or the halls of Congress and park their values at the door? Of course not. We can't do it ourselves, and it's foolish to expect them to. God is here to stay. How do I know this? Our founders made God a critical part of this nation. They did not establish Christian over Catholic or Protestant over the other, or Christian over Jew or Jew over Christian or any other balance like that. They knew that there were certain core values. And yet today I hear people tell me, well, the Constitution replaced the Declaration of Independence. I've never heard such foolishness. And I ask you to think of it in this way. Just as our political parties have two guiding documents. They have a platform and they have a plan of organization. And the platform says, this is what we stand for. These are our values. And that plan of organization says, and here's how we're going to set ourselves up to promote and perpetuate those values to achieve our goals. Our Declaration of Independence is our platform. It is those laws of nature and of nature's God that define the core of our own system of law and justice in this country. It is those 10 commandments set down by the God of Abraham and the God of Moses. That's how I know who that Creator is. In the eyes of our founding fathers, they knew that those 10 commandments formed the core of any civil and decent society. And frankly, I don't know of any law that's ever been passed that really doesn't have a moral foundation in it, in some measure. And that Constitution became our plan of organization. This is how we are going to organize to promote those values, not to use as license to run those values out of the public square. The Constitution was not meant to stifle our religious freedom. It was meant to guarantee it. And it is only through our free exercise of it that we will keep it. And we have to keep that in our message. So what do we do going forward? First, we have to have faith that God is still on our side. But as Abraham Lincoln said, I'm not worried about God being on our side. I'm worried about being on God's side. Or words to that effect. That's how he knows who the believers are. And we ask for his blessing on us. George Washington, after 8 years in office, said that it was foolish to govern this nation without God and the Bible. John Adams, who followed him, said that our Constitution was written only for a moral and a religious people. The religious foundation of this country is undeniable. But the way they do it is to teach something different in our schools. And that's why every election, even down to your local school board election, is so critical. We can't take anything for granted any longer. Reagan told us that freedom is not passed to the next generation in the bloodstream, and he was correct. He was following on what Abraham Lincoln had said, that what becomes in the classroom in one generation becomes policy in government in the next. And it is our job to prepare that next generation. Therefore, it is our job to oversee those who are preparing that next generation. So we have all these references through history. Why is it ultimately important? What is the biggest thing we can get as an argument for keeping religion in our government? Folks, I submit to you that we as God-fearing people, regardless of our denomination and how we may choose to worship him, we make the very best argument for the limited government that was defined in our Constitution. Why is that? What does religion have to do with limited government? Because, folks, a self-disciplined, a self-governing people who do so by virtue of their own internal morality have so little need of government. I've long said government is the evil made necessary by man's inability to get along with his neighbor. Because if we can't get along with each other, somebody's going to step in and referee. So it's time to have a little courage. It's time to have a little faith in God. What's going to happen between now and November is going to do more to determine what our next years are like on this earth. And here's what we can do. For the last year, I've been traveling the state working with different Tea Party groups. I've gotten to meet great people like Scott Cumbie and Kevin Chenault and Velvet Shelton, Darren and Angie Moser, Jim Isley, Maria Behringer, people like that. Citizens just like you and I. There's nothing special. Nobody's wearing a badge. We don't hold an office in any group. We're just citizens that care. I could come up and bring the sound system. I can't write you a $300 check, but I can certainly donate that to keep you from having to write one to put on an event like that. That's just me doing my part to do what I can. But there are 170 different conservative groups in this state, just like the Surrey County Tea Party Patriots, doing what you do. You are not alone in this battle. There's a lot of discussion about bringing people together, getting people to work together, and that's what I've been working on. Not to make one group superior to another, but to give everybody a seat at the table. Because frankly, folks, we all have a stake in the outcome in November, but everybody has to have some skin in the game. A year ago, Reince Priebus, the RNC chairman, said, well, the Republican Party is part of the conservative movement, not the other way around. What is this conservative movement? It doesn't really have a singular definition, but I'll tell you, it's part Republican Party, but it's part Tea Party. It's part Second Amendment. It's part illegal immigration. It's part the pro-life movement. It's everybody. And yet when I see groups get together, particularly those that focus on a single issue, God bless their hearts, they're as passionate about it as they can be. But if you get with a real pro-life person, if you don't want to talk about pro-life, they don't want to have the conversation. And frankly, that's where we start going wrong. Because it's everybody doing their part that is going to make us victorious. And I use this analogy to explain it. When one group starts criticizing the other, it makes about as much sense as criticizing the Marines that fought in the Pacific for having done nothing to win the war in Europe. Amen. And that's absolutely the truth. Is illegal immigration important? Yes. Is abortion important? Yes. Are our Second Amendment's rights very important? Yes, because that is our last defense of our First Amendment rights that allow us to gather here today. What is going to happen and what we are putting in place, thank you, what we are trying to put into place, and when I say we, that is all of those who see wisdom in this idea and want to jump in and join in. We know the Democrats are going to be in Charlotte for 4 days in September to crown the new king. I long proposed that during those 4 days we have a series of rallies in the state. My first vision was day 1 in Wilmington, day 2 in Raleigh, day 3 in Greensboro, and day 4 down near Charlotte. Well, that's fine, but that leaves out the mountains. So we're looking at a series of events starting on the very fringes of the state and gradually over the course of the 4 days moving down in toward Charlotte. Now this will be all over the internet, and that's fine because we want them to know we're coming. We want to surprise them with how many people show up. We have confirmed a venue in Charlotte on the last day of the Democratic Convention that will hold over 1,000 people. Folks, we need to pack that house. The week of Labor Day, plan on doing something. If you can't have another rally, I know Kevin, bless his heart, he's got the Constitution Day rally already set up for Joe Miyoki. They'll be talking more about that in just a little bit. But right before that, during Labor Day, if you can't hold a rally here, go to Mount Airy, have the rally there. Go down to Pinnacle, go down to King, you know, wherever there's one locally. Over to Sparta, I know the folks over in Allegheny County are in all likelihood going to have something one of those days. We need everybody turning out during those 4 days and painting the broadest possible face on this broader conservative movement. This is not about who's standing out in front. I can guarantee you it won't be the Republican Party because they hadn't figured out what they're going to do yet. And that's fine. But what do leaders do? Do they sit around and wait for somebody else to make a decision? And I admit, this is just my idea, but until somebody comes along with a better one, I'm going to run with it. And I'm going to try to convince as many people in as many forums as I can between now and then to step up and join us and send that message to the Democratic Party that we ain't going away. Yeah. So there'll be more details coming. There'll be many opportunities, but I encourage you to look around and see what you can do. Maybe it's just talking to your neighbor and making sure they're registered to vote. Because voter turnout has always been extremely low. Even in a good election, we're lucky to hit 30%. That means only 1 in 3 eligible voters bothers to go to the ballot box and express their opinion. We've got to do better this November. Obama won North Carolina by, I think, 14,000 votes in 2008. That's 140 votes a county. That's not a whole lot of people making a big difference in our future. So let's not take anything for granted. I commend you all for coming out in the heat today to be a part of this. It's great to show your support for everything that we do, but the biggest thing is to show support for each other. The victory is in God's hands. He's not going to do it for us. But the biggest thing that will bring us His assistance and that very divine providence that Ben Franklin spoke about earlier is, does He find us worthy of His assistance? And that is my prayer today, that He will continue to find all of us worthy and to give us the strength and the courage to do what has to be done. This is not a job we can pass to anybody else. We own it. And from now to November, we have to act like it. I thank you very much. It's great to meet the people of Pilot Mountain, and we'll come back and visit when we can spend more time. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Retired Major Dave. I tell you what, we are just tickled to death to have that guy. I'm glad he's on our side. Amen. Oh, yeah. And I like him. I like reading his posts and his articles. It is encouragement.